হ্যালো স্টুডেন্টস, আমি এবি স্যার চলে এসেছি আজকে তোমাদের লাইভ নিয়ে অন কন্ট্রোল অ্যান্ড কোঅর্ডিনেশন। সবাই জয়েন করো তাড়াতাড়ি। ওকে, তো আজকে আমরা দেখব কন্ট্রোল অ্যান্ড কোঅর্ডিনেশন, যেটা একটা ফাউন্ডেশনের খুবই ইম্পর্ট্যান্ট টপিক। এখানে প্লান্ট হরমোনস এবং অ্যানিম্যাল হরমোনস দুটো বিষয় থেকেই অনেক প্রশ্ন আসে অ্যান্ড খুব কিন্তু ইজিলি নম্বর পাওয়া যায়। তো আজকের লাইভ ক্লাসে আমরা খুব শর্টে ডিসকাস করব about the plant hormones and the animal hormones. সবার প্রথমে আমরা দেখব প্লান্ট হরমোনস। প্লান্ট হরমোনসকে আমরা ফাইটো হরমোনসও বলে থাকি। We also tell the plant hormones as phytohormones. Now, how do these hormones generally act? Now, in case of plants, the phytohormones can be growth promoting as well as growth inhibiting. তাহলে ইজিলি আমরা এটাকে দুটো ক্লাসিফিকেশনে নিয়ে চলে যাই। একটাকে আমরা বলছি গ্রোথ প্রমোটিং আর আরেকটা হচ্ছে গ্রোথ ইনহিবিটিং। গ্রোথ প্রমোটিং অ্যান্ড গ্রোথ ইনহিবিটিং। তাহলে জেনারেলি আমরা প্লান্ট হরমোনস যেগুলো পড়ি, টোটাল 5, উই স্টাডি 5 প্লান্ট হরমোনস: অক্সিন, জিবুলিন, সাইটোকাইনিন, abscisic acid and ethylene. These are the 5 we study. So out of the 5, the first 3, that is oxin, gibberellin, cytokinin, they are considered as growth promoting phytohormones, whereas on the other side baki je duto roilo, that is abscisic acid and ethylene, they are generally considered as growth inhibiting phytohormones. But there is one important thing here. Okay, yes Aradhya, good evening. What's your question? बताइए क्या क्वेश्चन था आपका? आप कमेंट में डालते रहिए, मैं आगे थोड़ा पढ़ा लेता हूँ, फिर जो आपका यहाँ पे डाउट है उसको बता देता हूँ, ठीक है? ओके, गोइंग फॉरवर्ड. Okay, so we will study about auxin. Okay, now in case of auxin, so in your exam what generally is asked is about the source of the plant hormones, where are these plant hormones generally produced, and what is the function, what are the functionalities of this. Okay, Aradhya, I'm waiting for your question. Okay, so please post it, I'll answer it. Okay, now auxin is produced at the root and shoot tip, and in terms of its functions, we look at apical dominance. Now apical dominance is one of the most important points about auxin, where the plant grows on increasing in length. Height e বাড়তে থাকে, লম্বা হতে থাকে, সাইডে গ্রোথ হয় না, লম্বাতে বাড়ে। So that's called apical dominance, and that is due to the effect of auxin. Other effects are induce parthenocarpy in fruits, Now, what is parthenocarpy? Parthenocarpy means the fruit develops without fertilization. That means without fertilization, the fruit is formed. And how can this be achieved? You can achieve this by spraying oxen on the plants. So when you spray oxen on the plants, due to parthenocarpy, the fruit that is produced, it will be seedless. It will be seedless fruits. Nowadays, I think you get bananas generally which don't have seeds. So those are parthenocarpic fruits. So they induce parthenocarpy. We can also tell induce rooting. Induce rooting. So whenever you take a stem cutting, for example, you take the stem cutting of rose, you take the stem of a rose and you want to put it in the soil and grow into a plant. Okay, so what we can do is, if you just dip the stem in oxygen and then put it in the soil, the rooting is very prominent and the plant survives. Okay, so these are the three most important functions of oxygen. Okay, and next we move on to gibberellin. Next we move on to gibberellin. Okay, now gibberellin, generally if we see the examples, it will be written like GA, GA1, GA2. Out of that, GA3 is the most common, so it's called as gibberellic acid. And in the previous slide where I have explained about the oxen, in terms of examples you can write NaA, naphthalene acetic acid. Okay, now coming to gibberellin. Okay, online online students, are there? Are you still there? So you told you had a doubt, so you can please post your doubt here. I'm there to solve your doubt. Okay, so gibberellin, one example is gibberellic acid, that's GA3. GA3 is the most prominent one. And next, going to the source from where it is produced. Okay, so it is being produced by germinating seeds. Germinating seeds, and we can also tell mature parts of the plant. Okay, now in terms of functions, if we see, so the most important function in this is induces bolting. Induces bolting. Now what is bolting? Bolting is basically internodal elongation. Bolting is basically internodal elongation. For example, if you see any plant which is dwarf plant, and if we spray gibberellin on that, or if we apply gibberellin to that plant, the length of the plant increases, and that's called as bolting. And second, we can write induce germination. Induce seed germination. These are the two most prominent. You can also write about cause parthenocarpy in fruits, that also possible. Cause parthenocarpy in fruits. Okay, now going to the next plant hormone. So we are done with auxin, we are done with gibberellin, and next we go on to cytokinin. Okay, next we move on to cytokinin. Now you'd have seen that or you'd have heard that there are certain plant hormones which generally keep the plant greener. So that's cytokinin. They will delay senescence. They will not allow the plant to die. They'll try to they'll cause mobilization of resources, mobilization of nutrients. As a result, the plant is going to extend its life. So cytokinin functions, if they ask. Okay, induce chlorophyll synthesis, induce chlorophyll synthesis in green parts of the plant. Okay, we can also tell they induce cell division. They induce cell division. Okay, so these are the two important functions of cytokinin. Okay, now going forward, after cytokinin we have abscisic acid, ABA, abscisic acid. See, this topics we are studying from your exam point of view, from especially the class 10. So in this case, out of this 5 hormones, any one will be asked. If you see in the last 2 years, especially in the ICSE boards, they have asked about auxin and cytokinin. So gibberellin, abscisic acid and ethylene are the ones that can come this year. Okay, so just keep an eye on this. So your answers, one of your board answers will be from this part. Okay, so abscisic acid, we can tell it induces senescence. Senescence means death of the plant. It induces death of the plant, not the whole plant, but rather it induces death of certain plant parts. Certain plant parts it will induce the death. For an example, you would have seen যে কখনো গাছের পাতা আস্তে আস্তে হলুদ হয়ে যায়, ঠিক আছে, হলুদ যে পাতাগুলো হলুদ হয়ে যায়, তুমি যদি ওটাকে you can just touch the leaf falls. But if it's a green leaf, সবুজ পাতা, if it's a green leaf you touch, it's not going to fall. So that time if you try to tear off the leaf, you'll see there's a wound that is created as kind of a cell. You will see there's a cell sap. So that's not an abscission layer, that causes injury to the plant. But if abscisic acid is in action, it will cause an abscission layer which will not cause an injury to the plant, and the leaf will just fall like that easily. That's the action of abscisic acid. So we can tell it induces senescence in plant parts, not the whole plant as a whole, in plant parts. Okay, and next we can tell it helps the plant to overcome stress. What kind of stress? For example, the plant is growing in the soil which has got less amount of water. If there is less amount of water, it's going to cause stress to the plant and it's going to cause the closure of the stomata. So we can tell closure of the stomata as a stress response. Sometimes it's called the stress hormone for plants. So your answer is going to be abscisic acid. Closure of stomata. These are sure shot. You are surely going to get a 2 marks from this part. Okay, so please keep this just live which you're watching. You will be getting a question from this in your boards. So just watch this again and again and just keep it in your memory. 1-2 marks is for there, sure for you, pakka you'll get. Okay, and then going to the next one, the last plant hormone, that's called as ethylene. Now ethylene is kind of different from the other plant hormones because ethylene is a gaseous plant hormone. Ethylene is a gaseous plant hormone. This is gaseous. Okay, others are liquid. In the other বাকিগুলো তো আমি লিখিনি ওইগুলো কি, but in this one this is gaseous and the others are liquid in form. But is this always gaseous? No, the commercial one which we generally use, that is liquid, but the natural ethylene which is produced by the plant parts like a ripened fruit or something like that, they generally produce it in gaseous form while others are in liquid form. And second, the most important function is it induces fruit ripening. It induces fruit ripening. This is the most important thing that is asked. Okay, now another thing, this is not generally discussed in the books, so they might ask you like normally we see growth promoting is auxin, gibberellin and cytokinin, and when we talk of growth inhibiting we tell abscisic acid and ethylene. But in case of ethylene, they have certain growth promoting activities as well. So if the question comes, name a plant hormone which is both growth promoting and growth inhibiting functionalities, then your answer is supposed to be ethylene. Okay, now so in this we generally have seen the plant hormones. Now moving on to the animal hormones. Waiting for more people to join in, please. Okay, and Aradhya, your doubt is still yet to come. I hope you're there. So okay, even if you post it in the comments, I'll reply back to you after the class. Okay, and then going forward about hormones with respect to animals. I hope that this is a area where many students sometimes get confused, or the amount of thing you study is too much. কোনটা থেকে প্রশ্ন আসবে কোনটা থেকে আসবে না, it creates a doubt. Okay, so today let's see what are the most important things over here. Okay, so when we talk of hormones, so we can tell these are non nutrient chemicals. Okay, these are non-nutrient chemicals, because the hormones, they're either going to be proteins or steroidal in nature. Now protein or lipids in nature, it can provide us nutrition, but these are not going to provide us nutrition. So these are non-nutrient chemicals. And second, we can tell act as intercellular messengers, act as intercellular messengers. Why I have written this? Because a particular endocrine gland, any gland, let's take pituitary or thyroid or adrenal, they are going to produce a particular hormone, and that hormone is going to flow through the blood, along with the blood, and go and reach its target organ. So it is helping in the communication between one cell and the other cell. Okay, so that's why it's told as intercellular messenger. Next point, secreted by, I hope you know this, it's secreted by ductless glands. Now what are the ductless glands called as which secrete hormones? They are called as endocrine glands. So we can tell that secreted by ductless endocrine glands. Now the next point about hormones is in how much quantity they are secreted. Are they secreted in huge quantity, or they are secreted in small quantities? What? They are secreted in trace amounts, or we can tell released in trace amounts, very small amounts they are released. Okay, and we can tell why, because in small quantity itself their activity is pretty high. Just একটুখানি তৈরি হবে, তোমার পুরো বডি ওতে কাজ করবে. So we can tell that released in trace amount and highly bioactive, and highly bioactive. Okay, now people who are there online, if you have any question from the animal hormones currently I am discussing, okay, hormones and the endocrine glands, so if you have any question you can post it on the comments and I'll be just picking it up in a short while. Okay, so released in trace amounts and it's highly bioactive. Now going to the other points. Okay, site of action is away from source. Site of action is away from source. Okay, the site of action is away from source. So where the hormone is produced, it does not act over there, not the ones which we study. Suppose we study of thyroxine, okay, you study of follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone, adrenal, it does not act in the vicinity. It travels through blood and it acts on a target organ which is far from the source. So in this case the site of action is away from the source. Okay, now why I told the ones which we study, because the ones which we study, they are basically the circulating hormones. There is another category of hormones which are called as local hormones. In case of local hormones, they act in the vicinity, so we don't study of local hormones. So one example is prostaglandin. Okay, now when we talk of endocrine glands, okay, when we talk of endocrine glands, okay, now which are the major endocrine glands of our body? আমাদের বডিতে মেজর এন্ডোক্রাইন গ্ল্যান্ডস কোনগুলো? তো আমরা বলতে পারি we can talk of pituitary, thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal, pancreas, gonads, okay, etc. There are many more. Okay. Now hypothalamus it's also part of the endocrine system, but it's not the major endocrine gland, because hypothalamus, it has both nervous function of nervous system as well as endocrine system. So it's not the major endocrine gland, but it's part of the endocrine system. It's part of that whole atmosphere. Okay, so these are the endocrine glands. Now we are going to going to study just some of them, because the whole chapter is a big thing. So only what are the things which are mainly asked, we are going to focus on that. Okay, okay guys, I hope you're enjoying the life. Okay, going forward we are going to start with pituitary gland. Okay, pituitary gland. Here's something interesting. Why I chose pituitary? Because there is really something interesting over here. Now I'm going to draw a diagram. Just see. Okay, so this part is hypothalamus and this part is pituitary. Okay, now hypothalamus is called as the master of master gland. Correct? Hypothalamus is called as the master of master gland, and pituitary is called the master gland. Why? Because certain functions, not all functions, certain functions of the pituitary gland, they are regulated by the hypothalamus directly or indirectly. So when I'm telling directly or indirectly, both are happening. So when we are talking of directly, so the hypothalamus directly regulates the posterior pituitary. The hypothalamus directly regulates the posterior pituitary. And what are the secretions of the posterior pituitary? We have ADH, antidiuretic hormone, which is also called as, okay, can I get the answers on the comments? What is the other name of ADH or antidiuretic hormone? Okay, so I'm waiting for that in the comments. And then the other one is oxytocin. Okay, now these two hormones are secreted by the hypothalamus, released into the posterior pituitary, and posterior pituitary just releases it. That means when we talk of ADH and oxytocin, they are not produced by the pituitary, they are not produced by the posterior pituitary, they are rather produced by the hypothalamus, and where they're released from the posterior pituitary. Okay, now when we come to the anterior pituitary, this part, the anterior pituitary. Okay, now in case of anterior pituitary, it's an indirect neural regulation. It's a indirect neural regulation. Why? Because the secretions of hypothalamus, they are not directly poured into the anterior pituitary. Okay, so they pass through a portal system. They pass through a portal system which is called as hypophyseal portal system. They pass through a portal system which is called as hypophyseal portal system. Hypophyseal portal system. And through the portal system, the secretions are coming over here. So it's not directly traveling like we see in case of posterior pituitary. So in this case, in case of anterior pituitary, so the hypothalamic secretions, they are passing through the hypophyseal portal system and to the hypophyseal portal vein, and they come into the anterior pituitary, and it is controlling different secretions of the anterior pituitary. Now there are many secretions. We are not going to go in details. I'm just giving you a few names. For example, here we have growth hormone, adrenocorticotrophic hormone, then we have FSH, then we have LH, then we have PRL, prolactin. FSH is follicle stimulating hormone, ACTH is adrenocorticotrophic hormone, and we can tell thyroid stimulating hormone. So these are the secretions from the anterior pituitary. So these secretions of anterior pituitary are happening with respect to secretions of the hypothalamus. Now we know that pituitary is called the master gland because the secretions of pituitary are going to control the functioning of other endocrine glands. Correct? Now which secretions? Are all the secretions of the pituitary? No. it is going to be the secretions of anterior pituitary only, because the secretion, the posterior pituitary does not have any secretion of its own. These are basically secretions of the hypothalamus. So in case of anterior pituitary, these hormones which are released, they fall under the category of trophic hormones. They fall under the category of trophic hormones, and these trophic hormones regulate the functioning of the other endocrine glands. Okay, I see more people joining in on the live. Okay, so please join and get your knowledge enriched. Okay, now that was about pituitary. Now if I talk of, for example, growth hormone, I won't go into much details. So this basically stimulates growth, stimulates growth. Now how does growth hormone stimulates growth? It stimulates growth by increasing your metabolism. It breaks down carbohydrates, it breaks down proteins, it breaks down fat, so that your body gets all the necessary things it needs to build up. So sometimes it's asked like the one of the good questions over here. So for example, if growth hormone secretion is more, or this is also referred to as secretion, it's called as hypersecretion. In that case, it will cause gigantism. Okay, many of you know the great Kali is very tall. He's not tall, he's the taller than the tallest kind of thing. Okay, so that's a kind of gigantism. Okay, we can tell. Okay, now gigantism, now this part you should understand. In case of children, if from the childhood only the growth hormone levels are high, then only we tell it is gigantism. Okay, now the same thing in case of children, if we tell that the growth hormone secretion is less, in that case we will tell it as dwarfism. We will tell it as dwarfism. Okay, now this is also in case of child or children. Okay, I hope you all you're all with me in this class. So here we just discussed about the effects of the hypersecretion and the hyposecretion. For example, in certain you will see that certain people, they are less in height e choto hoy, but tara kintu tader thought process, memory, intelligence, they are parallel with anyone else. Okay, so that's a sign of dwarfism. Okay, but in some cases you will see that the people are dwarf and their mental intelligence or their thought process, that's not working, their IQ is less and all those things. So that's not dwarfism, that's a case of cretinism, which happens due to less secretion of thyroxine. Okay, so next I'll just pick up one more. So one more of gland I'll pick up. So let's pick up pancreas over here. There's something interesting over here. So pancreas, it's not a complete endocrine gland. Okay, so generally we tell an endocrine gland is a gland which secretes hormones. Now if I tell you, okay, is there anything else other than endocrine glands which secrete hormones? Yes. Now previously we used to study that it's the endocrine glands as the only glands that secrete hormones, but now there are other cells also that secretes hormone like factors. So there are certain cells, so it is better to tell certain cells and endocrine glands in our body secrete hormones. This is one point, just keep in mind. So in case of pancreas, it is mainly exocrine in function. Mainly it is not endocrine, mainly it is exocrine, and the exocrine is basically with respect to the digestive activities. Okay, so in case of pancreas, it is both exocrine and endocrine in functionality, hence it is referred to as mixocrine or heterocrine. Mixocrine or heterocrine gland. Okay, now since it is, we are telling mixocrine and heterocrine or heterocrine, but we are not going to focus on the exocrine activity since today our topic is control and coordination. So we are going to go through only the endocrine part. Okay, now in case of pancreas, the endocrine part is called islets of Langerhans. It's called islets of Langerhans. Okay, it's called the islets of Langerhans. Now islets of Langerhans, they consist of 1 to 2 million cells, 1 to 2 million cells, which in overall comprises of 1 to 2% of pancreas. So this is a data which is easy to remember, and also it gives us the scale. So out of the whole pancreas organ, only 1 to 2% is endocrine in nature, and from that itself we have so much of activities, including the sugar control and all the other things. Okay, so going forward, I'm going to the next page. So this islets of Langerhans contains 3 types of cells, but we are only going to focus on alpha cell and beta. Okay, now alpha cell secretion is glucagon, okay, and beta cell secretion is insulin. Okay, now many of you will be studying the function of glucagon and insulin, they are opposite. Okay, now if I tell you that insulin reduces the blood glucose level, will it be true or false? Okay, I want to see in the comments. Insulin decreases the blood glucose level. Okay, that's actually a true statement, but if I make the statement as insulin decreases the blood glucose level by converting the glucose to glycogen, that will be a wrong statement. Insulin itself does not cause the change of converting the glucose to glycogen. Rather, they induce the cells to use the glucose. What does the insulin do? It will tell the cells, you use the glucose. And if you use the glucose, either you use it for your own or you convert it into glycogen. That's what the insulin does. The same opposite will be kind of glucagon. Okay, so glucagon, we can tell, stimulates conversion of glycogen to glucose, and insulin, it is opposite. Okay, so in insulin the blood glucose level will generally decrease, and in case of glucagon the blood glucose level will increase. Okay, now that means insulin and glucagon, they are opposite in action. Okay, so since they are opposite in action, we use the term antagonistic. Okay, now here one more question that is there. Okay, so both glucagon and insulin are affecting your glucose level. Okay, glucagon tries to increase and insulin tries to decrease, so both of them are working in parallel and they are trying to maintain a particular glucose level in your body. Okay, now another important question which comes from the insulin part. Okay, this is a very kind of repeated question which you get a easy one to score marks. That is, they talk of diabetes mellitus. And there is another similar term, so I am also placing it here, that is diabetes insipidus. Okay, diabetes mellitus and diabetes insipidus. So insulin is associated with diabetes mellitus. Okay, so what it happens, this is hyposecretion of insulin. So if insulin secretion is less, less of glucose is being uptaken by cells, less of glucose is being converted into glycogen. As a result, the blood glucose level is higher. As a result, we get glucose in urine. Okay, so that's the problem with diabetes mellitus. It is due to hyposecretion of insulin. But when we talk about diabetes, don't be just confused by the term diabetes. Here it is diabetes insipidus. This is not at all associated with insulin. Okay, so in case of diabetes insipidus, it is hyposecretion of ADH. We studied in pituitary, antidiuretic hormone or vasopressin. So what does that do? The effect of vasopressin is it promotes reabsorption of the water from the kidney. So in kidney, when the filtration is happening, where the urine formation is taking place, ADH will stimulate the water reabsorption from the later parts of the tubule, and this reabsorption reduces the urine volume. Okay, if you have studied the excretory system, you will know that every day 180 liters of filtrate, every day 180 liters of filtrate, they are entering our nephron after the initial filtration, but when the final urine comes out, it is only 1 to 1.5 liters. So where does this remaining 178 liters go? They are reabsorbed, and one of the major effect is due to ADH. Okay, now if the ADH secretion is low, the water reabsorption is low, your urine output is more, you have to go for frequent urination, and that's the case with diabetes insipidus. Okay, so we still have time, still have time in the live. Okay, so so going forward, I'll just take up thyroid gland. I'll just take up thyroid gland. Okay, now when we talk of thyroid gland, now I think you all know. Okay, so thyroid gland is two lobes. There are two lobes present on either side, of the neck, or trachea. Okay, it's present on either side of the neck or trachea. Okay, so there are two lobes which are present on either side of the neck or trachea, and they are joined by isthmus. So this is one lobe and this is one lobe, and they are connected by isthmus. Now thyroid gland is very important. Okay, now like I am standing in front of you, I am speaking, so my body needs to be active, my body metabolism needs to go on, and thyroid gland controls body metabolism. Okay, that's very important. Okay, because nowadays a common lifestyle disorder has come, that is with respect to the thyroid. Many people we see taking thyroid tablets. Someone is taking 12.5, 25, 37. The multiple dosages are there, they are taking. This has become a lifestyle disorder. We need to conserve our thyroid. Okay, so it controls body metabolism, or we can also tell it controls the basal metabolic rate. It controls the basal metabolic rate. Okay, now apart from controlling the body metabolism, thyroid gland is controlling body metabolism, we all know it also regulates the blood calcium level. It regulates the blood calcium level. Okay, it regulates the blood calcium level. Okay, now coming to this, so what are the secretions of the thyroid gland? So we have T3, T4, and calcitonin. Okay, calcitonin. Okay, now calcitonin is hypocalcemic. Hypocalcemic means it reduces the blood calcium. Blood calcium take komiye debe. It reduces the blood calcium. Okay, now out of T3 and T4, now some of you might be knowing, so generally when we study of T4, that is thyroxine. Okay, so T3 is triiodothyronine, and T4 is tetraiodo-thyronine. Okay, now see, triiodo, tetraiodo. So from here one important question comes, that if you want to produce T3 or T4, that means you need iodine. So if there is deficiency of iodine, in your diet, that especially happens people who are living in the hilly areas, in that case they have problems such as goiter, because if there is less iodine, the thyroxine production is less, the body's metabolism is less. As a result, the necessary symptoms what are supposed to happen, they happen. Okay, so iodine is required in the presence for the production of thyroxine. Okay, now here I will just go a little more into thyroid gland functioning. Okay, that's for example, if T4 level is low, that means if the thyroxine production is low, that is called as hyposecretion. If it is hyposecretion, we can, the question hypo secretion of thyroxine, hyposecretion of thyroxine. So there can be two things. One, we can tell cretinism. Okay, so cretinism means dwarf, as well as we can tell less intelligence. Less intelligence. The other better way to explain this, you can tell physical and mental retardation. That also you can tell, because physically also the height is less and the mental growth is also less. Okay, so in case of cretinism, this is happening in children. And yes, that's another important thing, that cretinism happens in children. Okay, they are dwarf in height and they are less in intelligence. That is both physical and mental retardation. Now it is not always that in case of children the thyroid secretion is less. Sometimes it happens if in case of a pregnant mother, if the pregnant mother is affected by hypothyroidism, in that case, if the pregnant mother is affected by hypothyroidism, in that case the child, because of the low thyroxine levels, they are affected, and as a result they are dwarf and less intelligent. And in if we see in case of adults, it is called as myxedema. Cretinism in children and myxedema in case of adults. So less metabolism, less metabolic rate in case of adults, we can tell it as myxedema. Okay, so I think it's time, and we are there with the we are done with the live. So if you have any questions, you can post, and if you want any other videos to come, or maybe the second part of this, you post in the comments. Once I get your comments, once I know what you want, I'll surely post the next one, and there we meet again. Okay, okay, so আয়ুষ বলছে মিক্সিডেমা এন্ড ক্রেটিনিজম কি সেম? না, সেম বলবো না, মানে একটা বাচ্চাদের ক্ষেত্রে হয়, একটা বড়দের ক্ষেত্রে হয়। সো ইন কেস অফ চিলড্রেন অ্যান্ড অ্যাডাল্টস জাস্ট এইটা ডিফারেন্স হয়। ঠিক আছে, তো কোয়েশ্চেনে দেখে নেবে কোনটা জিজ্ঞেস করছে। ঠিক আছে, আর কারো কোনো ডাউট আছে, ইউ ক্যান জয়েন ইন, ইউ ক্যান আস্ক ইউর ডাউট। আর যদি তোমাদের মনে হয় যে এই সিরিজটার, এই যে আজকে লাইভটা করলাম, সবকটা গ্ল্যান্স আজকে ডিসকাশন করা গেল না ডিউ টু দ্য টাইম কনস্ট্রেন্ট, বাট সাপোজ তোমাদের যদি মনে হয় এই টপিকে আরও কিছু ডিসকাশন চাই, তোমরা কমেন্টসে দাও, আমি ওই টপিকগুলো তুলেই কিন্তু এইটার ফলো আপ সিরিজ একটা তোমাদের জন্য পোস্ট করব। Okay, so I used to tell, okay, Aradhya was there in the beginning, I then we lost her, I think. Okay, so okay, still waiting for your comments to pour in. আরও অনেক ইম্পর্টেন্ট, ধরো থাইরয়েড নিয়ে করলাম, প্যানক্রিয়াস দিয়ে করলাম, এগুলো ভালো ভালো কোয়েশ্চেন্স দেয়, এগুলো খেয়াল রাখবি। দিস আর ভেরি ইম্পর্টেন্ট পার্টস। ওকে, অ্যাড্রিনাল নিয়ে অত ডিসকাশন করতে পারলাম না, জাস্ট এখন টাইম আছে তো জাস্ট এমনি বলে রাখছি দ্যাট in case of adrenal gland, okay, they have two parts. One is cortex and another is medulla. One is cortex and another is medulla. Okay, just এক মিনিট একটু বলে দিচ্ছি এটা সে না, and then the live will get closed. Okay, so cortex থেকে যে সিক্রিশন গুলো হয় ওইগুলোকে আমরা বলি কর্টিকয়েডস, আর মেডুলা থেকে যে সিক্রিশন গুলো হয় ওটা মেইনলি হচ্ছে অ্যাড্রিনালিন আর নর অ্যাড্রিনালিন। ওকে, আরও এইসব ডিসকাশন নিয়ে আবার আমি ফেরত আসবো, বাট অনলি অন ইয়োর পাবলিক ডিমান্ড। ওকে, আয়ুষ বলছে স্যার পরের দিন সেল চ্যাপ্টারটা করবেন। ইয়েস, উইল কাম আপ with your requirement, will come up with cell. That's all for today. Thank you everyone, and we'll meet in the next live class. Till then, tada.